Hey guys, how's it going? This is going to be another one of those podcast episodes. I'm recording this at 4:23 in the morning. Sick, I gotta be up at 8. And I just want to talk about something that I find interesting. Like a lot of these podcast episodes are. It's not really supposed to be a big, groundbreaking video, it's just us talking, right? And the thing I want to talk about is something I've noticed recently. I just did a video a while back about Nexus Prime, and about how Hasbro was getting very cagey at a certain point in the 2000s about how overused the name Prime was. And you should also know that my favorite era of Transformers is really shaping up to be the late 90s, early 2000s. You know, Beast Wars and Armada, my favorite toy lines and favorite shows, that's where they are. And I enjoyed the creativity and the aesthetics of that time. Don't get me wrong, I also love a lot of the modern stuff. I like a lot of the stuff that came after. Animated was the show I grew up with, but personally, I'm really enjoying the Beast era and Armada right now. And I found it interesting, this idea that Hasbro was really, really self-conscious about their brand image. And not in the way that you might think. I'm not saying like, oh, they were self-conscious, worried about being paired up with toxic people. They weren't worried about like negative associations. What they were worried about was the things being too similar. They were really paranoid that there were too many toys that kind of looked like all the other toys on the shelves at that time. That's the reason why they were very self-conscious about how many primes there were. So they tried to limit how many primes. Rodimus stopped being a prime for a little bit. There was a little bit there where he was just Rodimus. Not Rodimus Prime, just Rodimus. The only prime was going to be Optimus Prime. But that extended to more than just names. They were also really self-conscious about names of the regular Transformers. So a great example I always give is in the Universe 1.0 line, there's a character who is obviously based on G1 Red Alert. And he's named Inferno. And the reason for that is because Red Alert was an Armada. And Hasbro was very, very worried that kids would get confused as to why Red Alerts now look like this as opposed to what he looked like in the cartoon. And to be fair, Hasbro had that fear in them for a long, long time. It's the reason why Ironhide wasn't in Transformers Prime, is Hasbro was worried that kids would get confused that Ironhide was dead in the movie and yet alive in the show. Which is really weird when you remember that Starscream and Soundwave and Megatron also died in that movie. But, you know, don't expect Hasbro to be consistent about this. But you understand where it's coming from. It's brand synergy. It's this idea that a bean counter in marketing is always going to bring up, the idea that we have to have everything on the same page. It's the reason why everything is G1 nowadays and why it's all kind of samey in terms of aesthetics. It's because you want to keep things consistent. Well, back in the day, Hasbro was actually a little bit worried about things being too consistent. They didn't want names to be thrown around willy-nilly. Okay, so there was supposed to be a smokescreen repaint of the Hotshot mold. If you've never seen it, it's a beautiful looking toy. It's the Armada Hotshot in G1 smokescreen colors. It looks amazing. It never came out. And the reason it never came out is because there's already a smokescreen. Again, in Armada. Hasbro was very worried that kids were going to get confused. And I can kind of understand that with names. I understand that because I remember as a kid being kind of confused which character was which and why these characters have names. The whole reason I began the Many Toys Of is because it is confusing when you're a new fan or a younger fan and you just don't know where to start because there's so many toys out there that all have the same name and they all kind of look similar. That's the whole reason why the Many Toys Of exists, is because this is an actual problem. But the really weird thing to me is that it went past names. Hasbro was always worried that maybe some of the toys looked too similar. And what do I mean by that? Do I mean that there were too many people transforming into the same vehicle mode? Not really. That wasn't all that common. Were there too many characters that looked like Optimus Prime? No, that never really happened either. The issue was the color schemes. Hasbro was worried that if too many toys shared the same colors, that people would get confused and not buy the toys. So I'm going to give you a great example. In Beast Wars, a lot of those toys were supposed to be orange or brown. Just to go through the guys off the top of my head. Tigatron was supposed to be orange. Scorponok was supposed to be orange. Polar Claw was supposed to be brown. A lot of the animals were supposed to be orange or brown, orange and brown. And Hasbro was really worried that's going to make the toy line too boring. Let's not do that. So they shifted some things around. Tigatron became a white tiger. Rhinox, who was supposed to be a lot more brown, now became a little bit more of a tan, and they became green. Grizzly 1 became Polar Claw, so Polar Bear, that's white now. Scorponok became gray. Eventually the orange Scorponok color scheme would become Sandstorm. That'd be a BotCon exclusive. They did all this because they were just worried that the toys, if they looked too similar, people wouldn't buy them. And I'm not complaining about that, because I do think they actually made a good decision there, especially when it came to show characters. I think Tigatron being white and teal is a massive, good point of his design. If he were orange in the show, he would look terrible. He looked too much like Cheetor. But by making him that white tiger with the nice blue teal, it's a great look. Tigatron's one of the best designs in that cartoon. So, even that makes sense. And they were also changing characters who were in the show, so it makes sense. They were giving them some priority. But we're going to keep going forward. Eventually we get to the 2000s. In the 2000s, there were so many Transformers toys out. There was the Armada toy line that would eventually become Energon. Universe 1.0 was out. Universe was a series of repaints. So you had G1 molds, you had Beast Wars molds, Beast Machines molds, Armada molds. Basically any mold that Hasbro had around could be repainted and put into the Universe line. You also had the early days of the Transformers Collectors Club. You also had multiple store exclusive lines, like the Fox Kids Beast Wars toys. A lot of Transformers toys on the shelves. And Hasbro, they're worried. Because the repaint line, the toy designers are just being told, hey, make the toys look cool. And they did. They made a lot of the toys look cool. They took Armada Hoist, made him Ransack. Great looking toy. They took Beast Wars Silverbolt, made him purple. It's a little bit weird until you realize that it's Beast Machine Silverbolt colors, then it's kind of cool again. They did some amazing looking toys in that line. Razor Claw. Good God, Razor Claw is one of the best repaints ever. The black and purple repaint of Tigerhawk. But you're going to know something. All those repaints I just mentioned, they're purple. You see, when you tell people just to make a generic mold, a Decepticon, a color that comes up a lot is purple. Purple's just an iconic color for Decepticons. When you think of an Autobot, a lot of colors come to mind. Red, blue, green, maybe white or black. Autobots are already so colorful that you can think of a lot of colors, but if you're just trying to think in your mind's eye, what does a Decepticon look like? A shit ton of them are purple. That's a problem, because now a lot of the toys are purple. Too many of them are goddamn purple. And Hasbro's getting really, really worried. Hasbro was so worried about how many purple toys they are, so they made the decision, we are going to change one of them. Okay, so which one are we going to change? They chose to change Tidal Wave. Tidal Wave was in the Armada cartoon. If you've ever been curious why Tidal Wave's toy is green and gray and looks kind of like Devastator, it's because he was supposed to be purple. In Japan, Micron Legends Shockwave, or rather Laser Wave, he is purple. So only in the United States and Hasbro markets is Armada Tidal Wave's toy green. And I'm not complaining, because I love that design, actually. It's hard to say. I think I prefer the toy colors to the animated colors. Like, the purple and gray Tidal Wave looks cool, and I'm glad to have my my Legacy United Tidal Wave. But that original Armada Tidal Wave toy is so good. Such a great look, such a great toy, so many great gimmicks, and the colors look awesome. So I'm happy they made the change, but it is a weird change that they decided the character that's in the cartoon, the character in the show, that's the one that's color needs to change. They didn't change Ransack, they didn't change Silverbolt, they didn't change Razor Claw, despite the fact that they're not in a cartoon right now. That's not the main line, that's the weird niche repaint line. I'm trying to think like what a good equivalent nowadays would be. So hear me out, right? There's Generations and then there's Cyberworld, okay? So let's say that Hasbro decides now there's too many green toys. Because there are a lot of green toys out right now. Constructicons and everything else. And Hasbro walks in there like, listen, we need to change one of the toys. One of them can't be green anymore. And the one they choose is Studio Series 86 Mixmaster. That's the one we're going to change. We're not going to change Cyberworld Scorponok or Cyberworld Venom. Nah, we're going to change Mixmaster. And I know that sounds weird and dumb, but that's honestly the equivalent of what this was, because at this point, Armada was the main line. That was the one that was in all the stores. It's the one that was most popular and made the most money. It's the one that Hasbro put the focus on, was Armada. Universe was that kind of secondary line. It was there just to have more Transformers toys out and give people an option, kind of like Cyberworld or the Swapticons. They're not the main line. They're there for a different reason and a different function. And that's so odd to me, that was a time in the franchise where Hasbro was intentionally making less accurate toys in order to feel as though there weren't too many samey looking figures. And I don't think Tidal Wave would have done that. There was probably someone in the marketing department or someone like a bean counter that didn't really understand the appeal of Transformers. I think they were the ones who were insisting that there's too many purple toys. I don't think that Transformers has ever been hurt by there being too many. I'm going to take that back. There have been times where Transformers has been hurt by having too many similar looking toys on the shelves. And that was with Bumblebee. That's the thing I don't get, is just a few years later, we had mountains of Bumblebees. Bumblebee would be repainted into another Bumblebee. So, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the pictures of the mountains and mountains and mountains of Bumblebee shelf warming. Because I remember those times. I was a fan during those times. I'd go to the stores and I would see those dozens and dozens and dozens of Bumblebees on the shelf. And that was a real bad look. That's a real bad look when your main character, or one of your main characters, is always shelf warming like that. It's the reason why Hasbro eventually took the hint and pulled back on Bumblebee. We still get a few Bumblebees a year. But back in those 2010s, Bumblebee would get maybe 2 or 3 or 4 toys every quarter. We were inundated with Bumblebees. It's so odd to me that Hasbro went from being paranoid that there were 4 purple toys in 1 year to being like it's okay to have 20 Bumblebees in 1 year in one toy line. Just think about how many Bumblebees were in the Dark of the Moon toy line alone. And don't even try to remember that there would also be Bumblebees from Prime, Bumblebees from Animated, and Bumblebees from Hunt for the Decepticons and Reveal the Shield, all around those Dark of the Moon Bumblebees when they first came out. There's nothing wrong with wanting to keep your toy line varied. I actually wish that Hasbro would be way more varied than they are today. I wish that there were more aesthetics. I wish that there was more budget given to a line like Cyberworld and it was given more presence, because Cyberworld apparently is doing exactly what it needs to do right now. I've seen so many new people going and buying Cyberworld toys. Kids are digging Cyberworld, and that's amazing. That's what needs to happen. But I do wish Cyberworld was given more marketing. I wish Cyberworld was given more attention, because it needs it. And I'm real sick of how many G1 toys there are. I am so tired of how many of the toys are G1 aesthetic. I am so tired of the 15th G1 Ratchet coming out, or the 22nd G1 RC, or the 5,634th G1 Optimus Prime this decade. I'm real tired of the G1 aesthetic. And I realized recently that's why I'm so drawn to that era of Transformers, the 90s to the 2000s. It's because everything was so weird and different. The Armada cast look amazing. They're basically just the G1 design philosophy through a more kind of early 2000s anime lens, and I love it. A lot of those designs have never come back. They're still unique. Beast Wars, good God. Those designs have never been touched again, so many of them. Some of the best looking Beast Wars characters only have the one toy, and that's kind of amazing. That's what I love about Beast Wars and Armada, is that they're so different, but also they've never been remade At least they've not been remade that often. So there's still a sense of specialness to them. They're still unique. Even shows like Prime and Animated, though, it's like not only are they pretty similar to movie or G1, but it's also they get a lot more attention. There's more toys that come out that are supposed to kind of look like them. I'm real happy with my Armada shelves and Beast Wars shelves entirely because of how unique they look. So in that way, I respect Hasbro in the 2000s wanting to keep their toy lines varied and not want the toys to look too similar. I think that's a great mindset to have. But there can also be too much of a good thing. Come on, guys. Tidal Wave could have been purple. He could have been purple.